Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and on most social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism. Let's get into it. We got a repeat offender by the name of Lieutenant Commander Shawn Redmond, newly promoted field grade Marine Corps officer. Just kidding. He's in the Navy. But say hello again, sir.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Excuse me. Let me.
What's up? Is that better?
That's better. That's better. Because you remember, you are a normal chaplain, so you got to act a little bit normal, you know?
That's right. Well, just to readdress the lieutenant commander thing, we don't, in the Navy, we don't get scrambled eggs yet. We're not as important as maybe a Marine Corps major would be.
Yeah, right. You're important to me. That's all that matters. I don't know. It's a good thing you came back on. I know. I guess it's almost like crack. You just got to keep coming, you know. So I appreciate that. I gotta have you on for a specific topic, but I do got to share some information with you or some news. As you know, I was selected for the Warrant Officer program.
Yeah.
Are you tracking?
Yeah.
Guess what I did?
Congratulations again.
Well, thank you. Well, I don't want you to congratulate me yet, but I did decline.
That's new.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I did decline.
You did get me on that one.
Yeah, I got you.
And what was your reasoning behind that? I support that, but do you want to talk about what?
Sure, absolutely. I'm pretty transparent. I think for those that know me, I'm a pretty family-oriented guy. So the last, I've only been in going on 15. The last 15 years, I have put my career first. Anything that has to do with career progression, I put it first, even before God, right? Even before my family. And they were kind of the hey, just FYI, for your information. I don't need your approval. Just for your information, I'm doing this. This is going to advance my career. This is better for me. Although does it have indirect ties to my family? Yes, it does. And indirect ties as well. And I just it was just for FYI. And this time, this was another example where I put my career first. Let me do this to progress my career. And I wasn't really bought in. I was kind of just doing it for the money. And I think most of us do. And that's great. The love of money is probably not so good, but I wasn't in love with the money. Not that nobody likes money, right? Sure. It's just all I did it for was the money. I took leave and I started spending time with God, and I have long conversations with my wife. And not that she was not bought in. She's a thoroughly indoctrinated gunnery sergeant spouse, so you already know how that is. She'll knife hand the best of you, right? And she said, I've been here thus far, and we'll continue as long as God takes us, or wherever God takes us. I do appreciate that. So those are some of the conversations that I had. And as I was spending time, it was right after Thanksgiving. We were watching a movie called by the name of Family Man with Nicolas Cage.
I like that.
Right? And I never seen that movie before ever in my life. We just picked it off of Peacock. I think it was on Peacock or Prime, whatever it was. Started watching it. Movie's done. I didn't even watch any of the movie. I just kind of watched the second half of it. He got a glimpse of what his life would be if this is what he chose, instead of going the business route. Because I think he chose the money, the career, the status, whatever it is that he chose.
I think he had like a nice Ferrari.
Yeah. He had a penthouse, free penthouse. He was basically living on... He's in cloud nine, right? Basically.
Yeah. And
the guy came one time and he said, "Hey, this is what it would be." He switched lives and he was in shock. And then he figured out, wow, this is what it would have been. There was a scene towards the end of the movie where they got into an argument inside the penthouse, right? As he was talking to his what would be wife and kids. And he started saying, "I do this. I'm a man. I do this to support. I do this to do this. I do this to do that." And then I was sitting there listening very closely to what he was saying. And I paused it. And I said, I got emotional right there. And then because as I was, this a week and a half of prayer and spending time with God. And I said, holy man, if you're not talking to me through this movie, this is the devil lying to me, right? It was an encounter for real. I paused it and I got chills and I started tearing up for a second. I said, is this what I sound like? And as I was doing this, I wasn't even paying attention to anybody. My mom, dad were here. My grandma was here. My kids were eating over there some snacks, or just everything was going around me. I was not paying attention. It was just me and the remote and the TV. And my daughter goes, why'd you pause it? And I said, give me a second. And I was sitting there kind of in chills and kind of starting to shake a little bit, right? And I go, is this what I sound like? And my wife comes from the back. She goes, everything okay? I go, let me let this scene finish out, and then we'll have a conversation, and I'll let you know if it's good or not. Okay. So she went to the playroom and started FaceTiming her mom. I pressed play. He did the whole spiel, was yelling at her, and she goes, her response was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just started gushing, right? And she goes, I've been here, and I chose us, and I would continue to choose us if you decide to do this. And I said, what the? And I paused it again. I go, oh my God, I'm done. There's no way I'm done. I pressed play. I got up immediately. Something told me to get up. I got up. I went straight to the other playroom. And I said, can you call your mom back real quick? And I said, have I sounded like this for the last 15 years? And I said, I repeated exactly what he said. He goes, yes. Is this what you've been telling me for the last 15 years? Yes. You don't have to do that no more. I said, I'm not going. Right? Here's the big picture was she's pregnant. She's due at the end of February. I would not be here for that. So she would have to figure out how to get to the hospital, how to have the baby, get home, recover with the newborn and 4 other kids. How selfish of me to put all those things onto my wife and my 2 teenage kids, right? And all those things kind of started adding up and as soon as I told her, it almost was like, you're good. And I said, well, that's it. So immediately when I got back, wrote my letter. I said, thank you for the opportunity. I will not be going to the Warrant Office program. And that was it. And I feel great. I mean, I told her right the day before I came back from leave, I said, this is probably going to stir the pot. People are going to ask some questions, and that's okay. Because the people in my circle, they've all said, good choice. I will never question your decision making. I knew it. Well, they said I knew, and not verbatim, but they said I knew it. I was just waiting for you to make the decision. I was like, damn, that's good. That's good. Jesus is good. Anyways, so that's the long story short. After 2 weeks of leave. Happy belated Thanksgiving, sir. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
Good. Thanks for sharing that. I think we've all been there in the military at one point in time. I had the fortunate opportunity of getting passed over 3 times. So, I was able to think through a lot of that and ask myself, why am I here? Why am I going to make this decision? And for me, it became more of a calling thing. But if that calling's not there, it does make it really hard to go forth and be okay with it. And especially your first calling being to your family. And that's what I hear in that is my calling is now to my family for the next 15 years, which could lead to greater things too.
Yeah. So I'm pretty stoked to see what God has planned for us. There was a point, I got a text message saying, hey, somebody wants to talk to you. I go, for what? It's not enough. I go, okay. I mean, I don't know. It was a little weird. I go, I have to convince certain individuals just to route my stuff. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But it got routed and then I got it, and hopefully I get the last piece of paper probably next week, and then it'll be submitted and then I'll get considered for remedial promotion, which if you didn't know, I got non-competitively selected to Mass Sergeant. So basically saying if I was in zone and I wasn't in the Warrant Office program, I would have got selected.
Okay.
So now I have to apply for that. That's a whole nother administrative process, but the board is in January. So hopefully, through prayer and God's will, I get selected.
Yeah. And maybe another component to this whole bigger picture is that somewhere there's a Marine who does want to be a warrant officer. And now, a position is opening up for them.
Yep, that's true.
And that might change their way in a profound way for the right reasons.
Ripple in the water,
so,
huh?
If you look at it through that lens, it's actually maybe better for the Marine Corps because they could have a Marine that really wants to be a warrant officer in that position instead of what we've seen time and time again, somebody who took the position for money or constraint or whatever other reason. And the reason not being I want to be here.
Right. I heard a statement. I learned how to want to be here.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one because I don't necessarily agree with that statement because I love what I do.
Yeah.
I didn't learn to love it.
Yeah.
I love what I do because I love God.
That's right.
Right. And it's not the job that you hate. It's the people you don't like. Right. It's like Grinch. The Grinch does not like Christmas.
Yeah.
He loves the idea of Christmas. He just hates the people that made it this way.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't treat him that way, Christmas would be amazing for the Grinch. Yes?
I think so. I think there's a spiritual context
Right.
to the Grinch.
And I think that's the idea here is like, oh, hold on. If you were doing the right things in the eyes of God, right, at least biblically speaking, spiritually speaking, this would not be an issue. I didn't learn to love it. I didn't learn to love being a husband. I go, well, if you loved God, you would love what you do. Is it hard? Absolutely. Nothing's easy, but it's rewarding because you love God.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, chaps. You're a 04 now in the Navy, so you have a lot of power here.
That makes me all knowledgeable. I think my head's a little shrunken.
Stop.
In my 12 years in the Navy, but I will say it's your path. So no one has the right to tell you what's right or wrong for your life. That's between you and God and your family. And I think if a lot of us live that way more often, we would be happier instead of trying to figure out what is it, the institution wants for me, or what is it certain individuals think I should be. I think that's what gets us into trouble instead of saying, what is it God has called me to do? What is it that's good for my family in combination with some of those things? Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. But I have you on. I do appreciate having these conversations. I wish that every month that we meet, we just record because it's honest, transparent conversation. But then you would be like, I can't say this, I can't say that. We leave all the juicy details out, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I try to be as honest as I can be without throwing people under the bus, including myself.
That's fair. Look, I'll tell you what, sir. Thanks for coming on again. I do appreciate it. If you're just tuning in, we got Lieutenant Commander Shawn Redmond. It sounds great, doesn't it?
It sounds weird to me.
Stop.
I was a lieutenant for 11 years, so it's funny. I think I'm making it a little more awkward than other people are, just because it's just new. Yeah, I'm not used to it.
What does this now do for you? I know you're gonna finish out. Do you get to finish out your tour here, or you got to leave early?
No, I should be able to finish here. I think they're gonna leave me put. I don't have too much longer left on my contract or my time here. But my next job will be supervisory in context. So there probably will be a little bit of boots on the ground ministry, like frontline ministry, but most of it will be training junior chaplains that are more junior than me on how to do it well. And hopefully, since I was a lieutenant for 11 years, I had enough character development.
There we go. Your testimony is strong.
Yeah.
The force is strong with this one. Who better than you?
That's a good question. In my mind, there's a lot of.
I'm sure there is, but
I think God's given me a lot of time to grow and to learn, and that wisdom and the suffering over the last 11 years I can use to teach others.
There it is,
and that's kind of what discipleship is.
There it is.
So
look at you, it's perfect person to be in those shoes. Nobody better. I mean, in my eyes, based off your experience, based off your adversity and your resilience, you and your family's resilience.
Yeah.
Right. Who better? I'm just saying.
Well,
I'm sure there's many lieutenants that got passed over promotion, but I'm a little biased with you, right? But I'm just saying.
Yeah, I take that Isaiah approach where, God's saying, whom shall we send? Isaiah said, here am I, send me, Lord.
That's right.
I think as long as we have that approach towards life or the military or ministry or whatever it is, that's what God can work through. Does it mean you're going to promote when you want to or get what you want all the time? No. I think God's going to challenge you a lot on that and kind of force you into some situations where you have to humble yourself and let go of your ego and grow.
That's good.
So
God, that's awesome. Well, I would say we should end on a high note, but we're going to end on a kind of a, mallet of misery type of a note. I got you on because you mentioned a couple weeks ago something called the mallet of misery, and it caught my attention. And I think that's the majority of service members' experiences coming up and staying in 4, 8, 10, however long they stay in. A lot of the time when they PCS into a new duty station, they get an indoctrination period of the duty station and the command and things you do. And then the conversations that happen behind closed doors, right? I'll tell you what, when I first got here, I had a conversation behind closed doors that were not positive in nature. It's this is what you're gonna do. This is what you're gonna experience. I go, is there anything good about the duty station, or is this is what I'm getting myself into? I go, this is what you're getting yourself into. I go, oh boy, well, this is gonna be a long 3 years if this is the entire, But you plant, what is it? You bloom where you're planted. You water the grass where you're at.
Yeah,
and that's what I've been doing here. And again, it's the fruits of its labor have been showing. I've been pouring into these young Marines and a good outpouring. You got 3 meritorious promotions, 3 advancements. What do you call it? Marines. We've been taking NC of the quarter for the last 2 quarters, 3 quarters, I think it is.
Yeah.
So it's a good outpouring. It's good.
Just to
reap what you sow.
Math yesterday.
Who?
You had a meritorious promotion yesterday.
Yeah, Lance Corporal Lama. Now Lance Corporal. Yeah, meritorious Lance Corporal. So yeah, that's the most recent one. Good job. If you're listening, good job.
He's solid.
Solid dude. He's a good dude. He's a little older than most young PFCs, Lance Corporals. And they got a new one, a new PFC. Same age, 26. I like this age group that's coming up in this
big
PFC.
guy.
Yeah, big guy.
The rugby
player. He's a good dude. He seems like he have a good head on his shoulders. He's on the right path. So, but yeah, I mean, you reap what you sow.
I tried to pit him against you on the basketball court, but he said he didn't play basketball.
He just plays physically contacted sports like rugby. I can't
Sounds familiar.
But yeah, he seems like a good dude. Good head on his shoulders, in the right path. Hopefully, I get to pour him into him a little bit before I leave. But yeah, mallet of misery though. Let's talk about that here. So if that was the case when I got briefed, indoctrinated here, I don't think that these Marines would excel or doing the things that they're doing because I kept that same mentality. Yeah. Can you explain what the mallet of misery is and a brief maybe example of your mallet of misery, and then I'll touch on mine?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I coined that term or not. I've developed it for myself, and I think we're all guilty of using the mallet of misery. I think it's common practice in the military actually, but basically it's when you report to a command and all you hear is bad things. Like, this place sucks, the weather's not good. You're in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to rain 8 months out of the year. It gets cold. You'll have 5-hour days. You'll get up when it's dark. You'll leave work when it's dark. All the things we hear. The mission here is arduous and it's hard and it's just not good for anybody. The hours are bad. And I call that the mallet of misery. And a good example of that would be my first time on a ship. I was TAD to the Nimitz CVN 68. I think she's the oldest carrier in the fleet now, still up here in Washington. But a chaplain was having some health issues and he asked if I could work his post for a few months underway or a couple months underway, and he would work my post at the hospital and get the medical care he needed. And I was like, sure. I joined the Navy to be a sailor. I always heard my dad growing up, he was a destroyer sailor, tin can sailor. He'd say, unless you go to sea, you're not a real sailor. So I volunteered and packed my sea bag, and I found myself on the Nimitz. And I remember being so excited because I always wanted to be on a ship, and here I'm on an aircraft carrier and I'm walking around the hangar bay just trying to figure out where I'm at. And I end up in O Country looking for my workspace and my stateroom. And I keep walking up and down this one P-way. And I hear somebody say, "Hey, chaps, are you lost?" And so I poke my head into a stateroom, and it's an officer I knew because his spouse was at the command I worked at. And I was like, yes, sir, I'm here, and I'm going to be here for, a couple months covering for this chaplain. And he's like, oh, it's good to know. And, you could see the excitement and joy. I'm sure I looked like a giddy little kid, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, just glad to be on a ship. And I remember that's when he took out what I now call the mallet of misery and began to whack me with it, which is, don't worry, give it a couple weeks. This place sucks. You'll be doing a lot of counseling with certain individuals on the ship and they're going to wear you out. And I just took whack after whack of, this place is not a positive place to be. I don't know that he even said anything positive about the ship. I was like, yeah, but there's F-18s. He's like, yeah, well, the one in the hangar bay is broken. And, it was just a lot of negativity. And I've seen that time and time throughout my career now. That was my first duty station. That's all I knew. But I just remember walking away from this stateroom slumped over. I was walking up and down the P-way proud and happy. Now I'm slumped over just like, man, is it going to be that bad? And a couple weeks later, a lot of that was true. It was a hard place to be, and I was worn out, and I was doing a lot of counseling with people who weren't happy. So yeah, it lived up to the reputation, but that could have been an opportunity for him to say, hey, your job's going to be really hard, but there's people like me who can kind of show you the ropes, or what you're doing is valuable. It is going to be hard and arduous, but what you do is, a valuable piece of bringing peace and serenity to our sailors, and helping them heal and be on the ship and survive. But none of that happened. It was just all the mallet of misery. I'm going to whack you with this negativity or nihilism, which is everything is meaningless.
Oh my goodness gracious. And that kind of turned into the seed that he planted.
Yeah.
Indirectly, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it contributed to maybe how I saw the ship, but there was some truth in that. However, he never, highlighted any of the good things about the Nimitz. There was a lot of amazing things. I got to watch F-18s launch off the flight deck and, get up on Vulture's Row and feel the heat of the blast.
Dude, that's awesome.
And work with a lot of good sailors and learn how to do mass casualty drills. All these things that I needed to know as a chaplain were happening too. But none of that was highlighted. He was just so focused on the misery and the nihilism, because he had probably been there for a long period of time. It just overtook who he was and how he portrayed the ship. And I don't think he even realized he was doing it. It wasn't intentional. But to me, being a brand new, chaplain, officer, a sailor to a ship, it didn't feel very good. But, I've probably been guilty of that at points in my career too. When I was in a duty station where I was burned out a little bit, or, some negative things had happened, I probably didn't portray that duty station in the most positive way. So I had to check myself.
I agree. I think we're all pretty guilty of it. Are we guilty because we're superior officers, or it's not superior, senior service members? Or does it happen what is it called? What is the,
on the deck plates?
On the deck plates. There we go. I couldn't figure out the term.
I mean, I think absolutely, as officers or senior enlisted, people are more vulnerable to what we say and do in regard to a place. So they're always watching us. So I think that has an element to it. But how often do we have interactions with all the sailors on the deck plates, or all the Marines, who are in the foxholes? With some of them, yeah, but not all of them. I think a lot of this is also happening on the peer level.
Whoa. Slow down, sir. Slow down.
Well, so if you ever talk to a Marine or sailor when they report to a command, I always ask them, hey, did you hear any rumors about this place? Because I know they're going to say, yeah, I heard that this place sucks. Same things I heard when I went to the Nimitz. And I listened to them, I let them get it out. I'm like, well, do you mind if I tell you some positive things about this place? And I kind of, highlight, like if you take Washington, for example, Mount Rainier, the Olympic Mountains, the beautiful summers. Yeah, you got to be honest with them. Yeah, the winters are going to be long and dreary and dark. But man, when the summers happen, it's epic. And reinstate and instill in them how valuable they are to the mission at this command, and focus on those things. And I think as senior people, that's how we can kind of counteract what's happening at the lower levels, which is, we work long hours, the weather sucks, this place is hard to be at.
How does that affect sustaining the transformation?
What do you mean by
the mallet of misery? Does it sustain the transformation, or does it take the deter from the transformation, that from civilian to Marine, or civilian to sailor, right? In the Marine Corps, obviously you've heard sustain the transformation because you've been around Marines, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you sustain transformation from civilian to Marine, and then back to civilian, the whole life cycle of a Marine. It starts with boot camp, indoctrinating young, impressionable individuals in love and core and country, right? Instinct, will, and obedience, orders, discipline, through daily routine, battle rhythms, and then MCT, and the basic warfighter, and then your MOS, right? And then into the Fleet Marine Force as an adult, thoroughly indoctrinated adult. And sustained transformation says, well, if I apply the mallet of misery, then you have the outcome that you have. For example, not specifically this duty station, but other duty stations that I've been at, there's a lot of conduct related issues because, they had, if you want to, this place is unique, but other duty stations, you have conduct related issues because you could apply the mallet of misery because senior enlisted or senior officers that's how they've experienced it. And so therefore it trickles down to the junior levels. And so now, because if they're feeling this way and they're doing these things, what's the difference if I do it and say it or be that way or wear it on my sleeve, so to speak? How does that, can you touch on that in terms of sustained transformation? Obviously, the obvious answer is no, it does not. But explain how we don't touch everybody or directly, and explain how indirectly we touch everybody in terms of the malady misery.
Yeah, I mean, if we use Marines for the example, like if you talk to a Marine, and in doc, I'll ask them about boot camp, and I use the crucible as part of my spiritual fitness training, and I explain to them actually what a crucible is. But I'll ask them about these experiences, and you'll see them smile and and be really proud of the fact they had been through the Reaper and all the things that are in the crucible, and they'll talk about all their training and how their training was good, and they're excited about it. But at some point in time in the training process, especially I think when they report to a new command, that's when the malady of misery starts to come out. And when you watch somebody graduate boot camp or even finish the crucible, you've been there, and you get to put that EGA in their hand. That's like one of the most pivotal moments of a Marine's life, right? Yeah. Not even their career. And I'll ask these Marines about it, and they get teary-eyed thinking about it, and they'll start talking about their DI and all the good memories. But I think a lot of times when they report to a new command and they're surrounded by jaded peers, that's when the malady of misery comes out, and the transformation process gets stunted a little bit, because instead of invigorating or reinvigorating all of that passion they have leaving boot camp and all their training, and they enter the fleet looking for belonging, and they enter the fleet looking for camaraderie and identity and all the things they joined the Marine Corps for, a lot of times the malady of misery gives them the opposite. It gives them more of what they had back home, which probably wasn't a lot of positivity and reinforcement and things like that. And they begin to say to themselves, I made a mistake. Like, this isn't what I thought it was. And I hear this time and time again in my office. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And they're not talking about the job or being wet and cold or standing posts or doing Marine things. They're talking about the lack of camaraderie, the lack of belonging, and the lack of kind of mentorship in a positive way. And those behavioral issues you're talking about, hazing and even emotional abuse and things like that. A lot of these Marines came from that. And that's why they sought the Marine Corps out. They wanted a better life. They wanted to belong somewhere. They wanted to matter. And the malady of misery reintroduces that cycle in their life instead of them entering the fleet and enjoying what they do, not because it's easy, but because they belong, because they matter, and being a Marine means something to them.
Yeah.
And so if you fast forward to the end of their contract, I think there's a lot of recruiting issues and retention issues in the military. And I think a lot of it is this malady of misery kind of cycle that's happening.
Word of mouth type of thing, huh?
Yeah. And so when I talk to new Marines and sailors, I'll ask who wants to do 20 years in the military. And usually out of a group of, let's say, 30 Marines and sailors, probably 4 or 5 will raise their hands. Now, 12 years ago when I entered active duty ranks, it would have been the opposite. It would have been 26 people would raise their hand, and it would be 4 or 5 that would say, no, I don't want to do 20. So that tells me something. Another thing I think that has happened in terms of the malady of misery is OIF veterans experience a lot of hardship and undue suffering. And those are your peers as well. And their kids have witnessed a lot of those things, maybe in terms of how they've talked about the Marine Corps and Navy. Yeah. Why would anybody want to join an organization if their mom and dad is saying it's not good? This is what happened to me. As opposed to my dad, the reason why I joined the Navy, he was a Vietnam War veteran, which was not easy.
No.
But the way he talked about his chief, talked about him like a father, and the Navy, like, it made me want to join the Navy. And my brother joined as a corpsman. Yeah. Because of that.
That's interesting. I want to stop you there before I lose my train of thought, because my memory's bad, short and long-term memory. But you talk about the impact the senior enlisted played for your dad, right? It touches on one of your your little memoirs that you push out in every month. Is people will forget what you do. It's quoted from, I don't remember who it's quoted from, but you quoted it in one of your monthly newsletters. People will forget what you do, but they'll remember how you treat them.
Yeah, so that was Maya Angelou. When a Caged Bird Sings, I think was the book she wrote this in, but she said people forget what you say to them, people will forget what you do to them, but people will never forget how you make them feel.
There it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that, I mean,
that's perfect.
That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Is if you're in an organization, you feel devalued, why would you want to stay?
Interesting.
But if you're in an organization, you feel valued, you have purpose and belonging, and you feel like you matter, why would you ever want to leave?
Yeah,
You know?
I don't ever want to leave. I mean, well, I get people, certain people are going to be rough around the edges, but overall, I think there's good people here. There's good people everywhere. I mean, there's good people in this organization, and that's why the organization is good and still exists.
Let me ask you a question though. But how many people do you think it would take to devalue somebody enough to want to leave? Do you think it's just one? Could it just be one person, or does it have to be
I say it's one.
Okay.
All it takes is one.
And research shows like for every negative, it takes about 20 positive reaffirmations.
My goodness, that's a lot.
And this applies to our marriages too. So remember this.
That's true.
It takes, for one negative comment, it really takes like 20 attaboys to make up for that. And what is the person going to hold on to if you take that quote? People never forget how you make them feel. If you make them feel bad, they're never going to forget that.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you think about your own life, you hang on to those things.
Well, on purpose, of course.
Yeah.
Not accidental.
Because it injures you.
Yeah. Some trauma there for sure. I say, it takes is one. And everywhere I've been in the short 15 years, there's always one.
Yeah.
And I think that you could agree 100% there's always one. It's so far in every duty station you've been at. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And I might have even been that person for somebody.
Oh, boy.
If I'm to be honest.
Sir, you are the chaps. There's no way.
But, if I was having a bad day and I was like, this place really stinks and, so-and-so's not a good person, and I was just, letting it all out, that may have been the malady of misery for somebody.
Yeah.
And I think we've all been guilty about doing that from time to time.
That's fair. How did this conversation happen before you briefed in this little meeting that we had? How did it come about?
The malady of misery?
Right.
After that experience, I don't know, it just became an idea in my head. Like, I don't want to be that for somebody else. I didn't like the way that felt.
How did it come up here where I asked you to share it for everybody to hear? Outside of that meeting.
Like, why did I share it in the meeting? Is that what you're asking? Or?
So you shared it in the meeting because of a conversation you had prior to. I think it was. What happened in that conversation that triggered the malady of misery?
Well, there's been many conversations.
That's fair. I think you shared. You shared it with you had a conversation with a certain individual. I think it was the statement and it triggered the conversation with everybody.
Yeah. So I may have highlighted one individual, but it's been many in this office who've expressed the same feelings, which is, I hear it all the time. I don't want to be here. And I don't think it's just our command. I think it's a military issue. A lot of times.
That's true.
And we could say it's generational, and it's really not. Because I think if you look at even some of us senior folks, a lot of people are retiring right now because the same thing, I don't want to be here. And what inflicted those wounds was people using the malady of misery. And so people decide to move on.
How do we combat how do we combat as individuals, as men and women? Because that's first who we are as men and women, right? Before we put the uniform on. I got to talk to Major Miller. He was obviously, quite a character, quite an individual, quite a good person, always warm hugs. And they're warm, legitimately, they're warm hugs that you feel good because he gives you a hug. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they're genuine.
There you go. That's a better word. So that's why you get paid the big bucks. I'm just execute, kill, right? They're genuine hugs. And he said, the first thing I wake up and do is take a piss. That reminds me that I'm a man first before I put this uniform on. And then after that, I put the uniform on. And then I drive to work. And then my MOS starts to kick in. And then other things trickle down from there. How the reason why I bring up his experience in that conversation is he has an idea in terms of combating malady of misery. He has this idea that not many people like, and it's genuine and it's different and it affects everybody around them in a positive way. I don't think there's any negative about it. How do we as individuals, as men and women, combat the mallet of misery? I mean, that's one approach, but what's another approach that we can take when we experience the mallet of misery with our senior enlisted or senior officers, or just all around men and women, people in general? Like, I'm giving you, hey, sir, welcome to the club, blasey, blasey, this place that, this place that. What should I do as an individual right there and then?
Yeah. So what I've learned over the years, and this is probably a very chaplain thing to say.
I don't want the chaplain, sir.
Well, no, I think this is like a man thing too,
okay.
because this is something we don't think about doing, but we all need it. It's a way of checking each other, right? Not sizing each other up, but it's a form of a hug in a way. And that's to ask that person if they're okay. Because the reason why they're saying those things is because they've been injured in some way, shape, or form somewhere in their career, maybe at this command, maybe at a prior command, maybe even before they entered the military. And that gets into a whole discussion on moral injury. But, even psychologically speaking, when you ask somebody who's behaving like that, are you okay? It throws them for a loop. And it kind of resets their thought process. Like, a lot of times they're talking about, like, physically, they start, like, checking their body. Like, what do you mean? I got a booger in my nose? Like, no, are you okay? And then a lot of times that results in them asking, why are you saying that? Why are you asking me? And you can, in a caring way, say, well, it sounds like you're not happy. It sounds like something's happened to you here. And so you can use that opportunity to actually hold the mirror up for them and highlight some of what they're doing to you, but also turn it into a pivotal moment where you can help them with it.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then going for a hug.
Yeah. Or you could ask them, did someone hurt you, or,
that's good.
What happened to you here?
And
then explain, because you've only been saying negative things.
That's quite an approach.
Yeah.
It's not even, there's no presence with it. I mean, there is a presence with it, but not like the military presence that you're required to have. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like I'm hitting you with a mallet, and you just wait for your turn. Nice and, patient.
Yeah.
It's almost like a mallet in itself. Like, boof, like, oh shoot, man.
Well, it's like a mallet of compassion.
Yeah.
Empathy,
the new leadership trait.
Yeah.
That's good.
If I rewind myself back to, 12 years ago when I first got hit with that mallet of misery in the Navy, had I asked that officer, are you okay? I think that would have turned into a very deep conversation. I think he would have said, no, I'm not. And I could have maybe counteracted that mallet of misery a little bit better. And I actually walked away encouraged by, listening to him and his story and allowing him to talk about some things and understand why he viewed the Nimitz the way he did.
That's good.
But that didn't happen. I just walked away beat up, right?
Like, damn, that's freaking sir. I didn't know. Well, I don't even want to be here now.
Well, it's like, I think the CO now in his office, he has a mallet of positivity, right?
That's right.
A tire.
It's loud it's on my roof.
I'm sure you guys hear it.
Oh, every day.
But if there is a metaphor for a mallet of positivity, it'd be that, are you okay? Or who hurt you so bad that you feel this way about the Marine Corps or the Navy?
Yeah.
And allow that person to maybe talk about their story.
That's good. Again, I do appreciate my time with you. We're not getting paid to do this, but indirectly we're getting paid. Thank you for sharing. I do. I'd say that transparency and honesty. I would say sharing my decline to the program was a little weird at first, especially on a recorded line, but it's transparent. And I think people need to hear it. I think that if you only focus on the organization, you're going to lose sight of who you are. And that's what I've done. Not that the organization is not good, mind you. It's been good to me and my family, absolutely. But all my focus was there. And let's just say I go past 20. My focus, I will still do my job to the best of my abilities.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't change for me because of what I believe in. But I will take a hit on being a great Marine and roll that over into being a great father.
Yeah.
And I'll settle for just being a good Marine. I don't want to be great. I just want to be a good husband and a good father. That's what I want to be good at. And that's the kind of legacy I want to be. I want my kids to know that it's not always about the Benjamins, right? It's about the legacy you leave for you and your family. What do you want them to learn from this situation or the scenario? How do you want them to learn? How do you want them to apply to life? And I think that my 16-year-old turning 17 here in a couple weeks. That's crazy. It'd be selfish of me to put all that burden on her, figure out how to help her mom, the baby, the other two babies, the 303. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old now still. And then my son, 13, have him grow up really quick to raise his brothers and sisters. It's kind of selfish. It sounds almost, I mean, it is selfish if you think about it that way. So yeah, I mean.
Yeah. And isn't that greater devotion to the Marine Corps, like the institution? Because if things aren't right at home, doesn't that make you a lesser Marine?
Yeah, that's fair.
But if you're taking care of your family and your family's happy and you're being a good father and a good husband, doesn't that make you a better Marine and more mission capable?
I would agree to that statement.
Yeah.
Some would not. Some would not. Some would say you signed the contract. Some say, because you signed the contract, the Marine Corps didn't issue the family. You chose to have that family. They're here indirectly. They got to suffer the consequences. Well, I guess, I mean, if that's the way you're putting it, I guess so. Because that's what I was taught and raised.
Yeah.
In this gun club that's how you look at it.
Which contributes to maybe some of those behavioral issues you're alluding to. Because a lot of those involve people not being good husbands, fathers, spouses.
I remember on the depot, somebody goes, "I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good husband, but I'm a damn great Marine." I go, is that the right thing to say, or is that the good thing to say? Because if you're a great Marine, you're honorable in all things that you do, and you're committed, and you have courage, therefore, in all the things you do. I don't know if those statements can go hand in hand. You know what I mean? It would just have to be either you're a good Marine and you're a great father. I mean, those things kind of go hand in hand. You can't be one and not the other.
Like
you know what I mean?
They're intertwined.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, man, that doesn't make any sense. Then you just suck. Like overall, you're a hypocrite. You're a fake. And I don't know if your word is even valid to me at this point because of what you just said. So I don't know. Malady misery.
So imagine if you had asked him if he was okay.
Fair.
And he'd been like,
I did it.
Why would you ask me that? Sounds like you're struggling.
Yeah. I mean, shortly after he got a divorce.
Yeah.
A couple months later, he got divorced, PCS. There were some other things, and then he kind of left the depot. I don't know if it was a sour taste or not, but he just left pretty miserable, and that's not good. But yeah, that would have been a better approach at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be the appropriate approach in that circumstance or in that scenario of image over everything.
Yeah.
Right. But that'd been good side conversation for sure. I do got to ask one more thing. We always got to bring it back, weave it back. Obviously, you're in a position where you directly affect service members mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And those are some of the things that we lack in as either senior enlisted, senior officer, or even just junior in the organization, whatever organization. And we're not in wartime. We're in peacetime. We're in the garrison life. Op tempo's still high wherever you're at, depending on the MOS, and that's fine and dandy. But because we're not in war, we have a lot more time to think, and we have a lot more Marines and sailors and soldiers, airmen transitioning out. More than we'd like to stay in. And the transition from uniform to civilian, right? They lose purpose. They lose their mission set. They lose their tasks-oriented mindset, right? Because everybody in the enlisted ranks, the superior officer gives them a superior command, a lawful order. We execute. We don't ask the questions. There's people in the positions to ask questions, but we execute overall in terms of mission accomplishment. We just execute, right? And we lose those things. When we transition out, we lose purpose, tasks, missions, the battle rhythm. What is it that we're doing now, right? And a lot of the time, right, currently in this culture or in this era, we are losing service members outside of the uniform more than we're losing in the uniform. How do we combat that? Give them a tool. Obviously, we're talking about the malady misery and how we directly affect or indirect, senior enlisted and officer directly affect or indirectly affect their emotional state. But when they transition, they lose it. They lose purpose. Give them a tool for their toolbox, straight from the horse's mouth. The chaps, because you have a direct connection to God himself. Give them a tool.
I would say community's a big tool to have because, I mean, whether we admit it or not, we have a lot of community in the military. We all show up and wear the same uniform every day. We do suffer together in PT, staff and OPT sessions.
Yeah.
Not for an old man like me, but I enjoy it because I'm out there. I'm part of a community, and we experience a lot in the military. And I think when we leave, we don't realize how big of a part of our life community is. And then we enter the civilian world, and that's kind of taken away, and people start to isolate, or they don't actively seek a community. Now, could that be faith? Sure. Church for a lot of people is that. It's that community, that group of believers that you have something in common with. But it could also be veterans organizations. For me, I'm an avid runner, so most of my running partners aren't even military, they're civilians. Running races, being a part of the running community, trail running community, ultra running community, those things. I collect vinyl records, so oftentimes I'll find myself in vinyl record stores just talking to other people about the philosophy of music. We call ourselves audiophiles, right? We're kind of music dorks. And having those communal interactions with people. And I think that's a key to having purpose beyond the military, is you have to find that community to be a part of, so that you don't feel so alone or feel like people don't understand you or don't know what you've been through. And a lot of that's us checking on our fellow veterans while we're still on active duty, and people have retired and gotten out. And I've been guilty about not doing that as much as I should. I do it on holidays and things like that, but it should be a regular thing. And I think that stops for people who retire or move on, is they feel forgotten. And that can put you in a pretty dark place.
That's good.
When you go from a huge community to,
just you and
the
your
darkness.
Yeah, immediate.
Yeah.
That's good. Community. I didn't think about that. I mean, I talk to a lot of service members, past or present, current service members. Community was, I think, maybe hit a couple times, but it was communication, more communication, more talk to people. And I mean, that has direct ties to community. What community are you in, so that you can communicate? If you're not in a community, then who are you going to really talk to? Yeah. So if you're listening, or you're struggling with mental health, or you're taking that 30-inch step in the wrong way, take a stop, pause here, and take a deep breath. What community do you have around you?
And I think what you're doing is a part of that, right? Podcasting, it allows somebody to tell their story, and be a part of a huge community of viewers and listeners. Sean Ryan, he pulls all those special operations folks on his podcast, and a lot of times that's like it's almost a therapy session for those guys.
Yeah.
If you watch that, and I'm pretty sure you're doing the same thing, it turns into a very therapeutic thing for them to share who they are, what they've been going through, what their story is, and have other people affirm it.
Absolutely. That's the whole point, man. I tell you what, sir, how do I get people on? Well, it's a struggle. I tell you what, people are not comfortable being honest with each other, with themselves and others. Yeah. Especially them listening to somebody. But the ones that do come on, they enjoy it thoroughly because nobody's ever asked them. Yeah. I go, nobody's ever asked you your story? That's crazy, because no story is too big or small. Yeah, Sean, that guy got crazy guests. That's what he does for a living. I just want to share who's at the deck plates. You know what I mean? Who's relatable? Am I relatable to the recon bubble? Or that special, South dude? Probably not. Not in any way, shape, or form. Just that he's a man or a woman, or he's in the service. But that's about the only thing that I relate to. So I try to have everybody else, the support dudes.
Yeah. And I think that's its own thing. For any podcast, I think it comes down to vulnerability, right? That's why people tune in, is we all want to be vulnerable. It's just a really hard thing to do. So when somebody's genuinely doing that, there is an appeal to it. We do feel like we belong in those moments.
Well, I would like to make you more vulnerable, but you don't allow me to.
I'm plenty vulnerable.
Off the mic, sir, off the mic. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. For those that are listening, I got Lieutenant Commander Shawn Redmond, with yours truly, Gunny G. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with your host, obviously Gunny G. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere. Get your podcast, and on most social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism. I do appreciate the feedback. Again, Lieutenant Commander Shawn Redmond, thank you for your time. The floor is yours for like 30 seconds if you want to share anything that's on your heart or anything like that. If not, you just give me a thumbs up and we'll close it out right now.
I mean, one thing I'll say is, the holidays, Christmas, it's, for a lot of people, it's the happiest time of year. And for a lot of people, it's not, depending on what's going on in their life. So I would say just ask people how they were doing, but hang around long enough to listen to the reply. Because if you look at the way we go about life, a lot of times they'll say, hey, good morning, how are you doing? And before somebody can reply, we're 5 paces past them, right?
That's fair.
So sometimes it's the greatest gift we can give is to truly listen to somebody, and, you know, they'll be able to dictate, I'm having a great holiday season or I'm really struggling. Either way, it's you listening to the person.
That's good.
Either celebrating with them or helping them.
That's good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that word.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we out.
Podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.